Hello there. My name is Jim, and I live in Texas. And this video or slideshow is called "The Long Way to Clovis and Back." Quote, "A soldier will fight long and hard for a bit of colored ribbon," unquote. Napoleon Bonaparte said that. Well, from my experience in the military, there is a little truth to that. And certainly it can be extended to the civilian world. For example, some of us crazy motorcycle riders will ride a long, long way for a license plate frame. If Napoleon had thought of the license plate frame idea in addition to the ribbons, he might have had a whole battalion of long-distance motorcycle riders. What am I talking about? I'm talking about my recent attempt to ride 1,000 miles in less than 24 hours. I did this, A, as a personal challenge, and B, the bit of colored ribbon at the end of it is a license plate frame and a certificate from somebody called the Iron Butt Association. The Iron Butt Association is a fairly old group of people who are interested in long-distance motorcycle riding, safe long-distance motorcycle riding. And over the years, they've come up with a number of different awards and certificates one can earn. One earns them by carefully documenting, and they have extensive documentation requirements, carefully documenting a ride that meets one of their long-distance ride criteria. They audit it like the IRS audits a tax return. If they're satisfied that your documentation substantiates your claim to have made the ride, they give you a license plate frame, a certificate, and a patch. And those were the final motivating factors that put me on my motorcycle, leaving my house in Austin, Texas, for Clovis, New Mexico, one morning very recently. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. In March of 2008, I bought a Ninja 250 motorcycle, which I've discussed in some of my other YouTube videos. One reason I bought such a small and inexpensive motorcycle is because although I was in love with the idea of motorcycles, I didn't know if I'd like the reality. And for sure, I didn't know what kind of motorcycle riding I would like. And since the Ninja 250 is good for all different kinds of riding, even a little bit of off-road, as I've found out, it doesn't really excel at any one of them, perhaps. Well, it didn't take me long after getting my Ninja to realize that what I liked was very long-distance riding. I wanted to get on my motorcycle and stay on it. I wanted to stay on it as long as my physical endurance would allow. And I'm generally bladder limited, and we'll just leave it at that. But I wanted to stay on my motorcycle, and I wanted to really go places. And this is consistent with my interest in airplanes. I've always wanted to go, when I get in an airplane, wanted to fly it a long way. I've always been interested in what was over the horizon. When my brother and I were kids, we pretty much lived only in Texas until we were 18, and we used to speculate that there was no place out of Texas, that the whole world, other than Texas, was just a joke. Our parents and our adults around us were playing on us, and that when we were 18, we would be told that, hey, kids, all that stuff about New York City and Hawaii and Russia and all of that, those are all jokes. There's really only Texas. You get to the end of Texas, and that's it. It's just the Gulf of Mexico surrounding a little island called Texas. So maybe that's why, because I didn't travel as a kid hardly at all, I've always wanted to travel a long way. Well, another thing I liked about long-distance riding was I found that I found myself becoming what the Zen people call centered on a longer ride. Now, I've had some interest in Zen philosophy for a while, but I'm extremely reluctant to come out in public and talk about it, not because I'm embarrassed by it, but only because I know so little about it. What I do know has been very interesting to me and actually been very helpful to me personally to learn a little about Zen philosophy. And it's beyond the scope of this YouTube video to go too far into that, but I would mention the concept of being centered is sort of reaching a mental equilibrium where the things that are going on around you, you're completely connected with them, you're connected with yourself and your physical environment, and you're sort of in a balanced situation where your inputs are not too much and not too little. You're aware of what's going on around you. You're satisfied with what's going on around you, and you're you're not longing for something to happen, and you're just sort of there right then and there, very alive right in that moment. And that's the best I can do to describe it. Maybe I'll do another video sometime on a little bit more about Zen philosophy. And if you have if you have a religious faith or no religious faith, I would say that, just briefly, I would mention that the Zen philosophy is orthogonal to whatever religious views you have. I don't see anything in Zen that contradicts Christianity or Islam or any other religion I'm familiar with. It's really a way of looking at the world, a way of thinking. I found it extremely helpful to me. That's enough about Zen. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about long-distance motorcycle riding here. Well, when I really got serious about motorcycle riding, and as I've mentioned before, the thing that really sparked me was about a year ago. From this video, my friend Craig drove nonstop from Tucson on his big touring motorcycle. So I rapidly found out about the Iron Butt Association, the Motorcycle Touring Forum on Delphi, and other groups of cyclists or bikers who like to ride a long way. So it wasn't very long after I got my Ninja last March that I started experimenting with long distance riding. And long distance for me at first was 100 miles, a trip to San Antonio, or 100 miles and back, so say 180 miles. That was a long way. It still is a pretty significant trip on a little girl's bike like a Ninja 250. The first thing I did was to start getting my bike configured. Was almost within a few days of buying it. I ordered something called a cramp buster. The cramp buster is a little plastic gizmo that really helps you control the throttle without having to grip the grip real hard with your hand, and it can even be used, as I've shown in another video in my series, as sort of a redneck cruise control, although I don't recommend it. It's probably dangerous to use it that way. So that's just a theoretical thing one could do with a cramp buster if one wanted to use it. You can see my video on cramp busters if you're interested in that. That helped a lot. I then went on longer rides. The longest ride I went to for a while was about over 400 miles. That was to Bay City, where I did from Austin to Bay City. There I did a long Patriot Guard mission that involved a long ride with a group of about 100 bikes, standing at attention in a cemetery for quite a long time, and then riding back to Austin. At the end of that ride, I was in horrible pain, and mostly in my butt, and a little bit in my back and shoulders, but the butt pain was horrible. And I knew that if I was going to do a long ride, I had to do something about my seat, because stock seat just wouldn't cut it for all day, not on a Ninja 250 or probably any other sport bike. I first got something called a bead rider, which is a little beads cover like you see in the auto parts stores for cars. That helped. That was helpful, but it wasn't enough for all day in the saddle, a literal long day. Finally, I went to a vendor I like a lot called New Enough, newenuff.com, an excellent vendor up in the Panhandle of Texas. They sold me something called an AMS gel seat pad, which is a piece of just what it says, a gel material that's wrapped in a sheepskin cover. That made this long ride possible. I also put in handlebar risers. I've made a video on that, and I got a Lowrance XOG GPS. So those were the main things I did to make this motorcycle suitable for such a long trip. Now that I was convinced I had the motorcycle ready to go, it was time to actually make the ride. And in part 2, I will discuss the actual Saddle Sore 1000 ride that I accomplished recently on my Ninja. This is Jim, and I live in Texas. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for part 2.